Let's see. Let's just play this so that way the funny looking lightsabers coming on the screen. Yeah, and we can all talk. There's no sound to this animation.
Okay. Got to point out are you guys familiar with the Who, H-U? Mongolian folk metal band?
Oh, God.
Sorry.
It just made me off. I think I may have heard of them.
There you go. Welcome, everybody. The very first his show, humor in science fiction or sci-fi for short. I have the great Alan Dean Foster, Sean Sweens from Oddity, and Dave Sean from Oddity. Two humorous comic book writers, and quite possibly the man who has shaped so much of our science-fi youth and given us so much to inspire for. Welcome, everybody.
Ooh.
All right. Now, before I begin, and jumping into what is so humorous about sci-fi and the humorous stuff that you have experienced and know about, I want to play something. And it's an impression, and okay, here we go. One time, I was resolved to make a long, arduous journey on foot, looking for famous actors like William Shatner and George Takei in my neighborhood. It's only after several hours of finding no celebrity did I come to the realization I failed in my Star Trek. This joke is presented to you by Nagilam. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sound of crickets.
Okay, there we go. I just had to throw that out there. I want to find humor in science fiction. Trouble.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's that, sir?
No, I said now we can throw it out, but
yes, we can. I'm just going to throw this out there. Trouble with Tribbles is I think one of the funniest things in sci-fi I've ever experienced as a young man. And though the one other episode that really impressed me, and it is all from Star Trek, is when Kirk stops a fight with Scotty and the Klingons, and he asks Scotty, who started the fight? Well, I started the fight. Why? Why did you start the fight? Well, sir, they were, disrespecting us. And and that's when you threw the punch. No, sir. They were disrespecting the captain. No, you threw the punch then? No, sir. When did you throw the first punch? When they disrespected the Enterprise, sir. That really just at a young I think it was like 9 years old when I saw that. I got that humor, and that was incredible. Okay. Now, Alan, I'd like to start. I'd like to start off with you. Tell us what is one of the most humorous moments in sci-fi that you have experienced.
That's easy. It was a novelette. It was later expanded into a novel. The original story was called Plus X and appeared in Astounding Science Fiction. The author, who's my favorite author, science fiction author, also was John W. Campbell's favorite science fiction author, Eric Frank Russell, who was British but had a wonderfully skewed sense of humor, wrote this story about a slightly unbalanced Terran scout who was taken prisoner during a war far in the rear lines of the enemy, and manages to, I don't want to give the story away for everybody, but suffice to say that he's just trying to survive in jail and manages to do a few other things besides. The story is available in lots of collections, including several specific Eric Frank Russell stories, and it is, to my knowledge, to this day, the highest rated story ever to appear in Astounding / Analogue's analytical laboratory. I
Wow.
mean, it was number for everybody, and it is humorous science fiction. So anybody who hasn't encountered that story, I highly recommend they pick it up.
Well, that's definitely something for the playback to make a note of it. Absolutely. It just out of curiosity, what in terms of the humor, was it the humor that pulled you in to read the story? Was it the author? What was the attraction?
What was the author? I had read other Russell stories. Russell wrote both serious and humorous science fiction, but it was very sly humor. It wasn't pie in your face humor. And it all stemmed from the story, like all good humor does. It wasn't just, here's a joke, here's a pun. It all grew naturally out of the story and the character. And it's just that, again, I don't want to spoil the story for anybody who hasn't read it. But I remember reading it for the first time, and I laughed so hard I fell off the bed, literally fell off the bed. I don't want to build it up too much. Everybody has a different sense of humor. But if you've never encountered that story or Eric Frank Russell, I recommend both.
Nice. Okay, Sean Sween's here. Sean is the artist for Oddity, and here is Dave, is the writer for Oddity, a humorous frog book that happens to take a few hints from Spider-Man. Instead of being bitten by a radioactive spider, he's bitten by a radioactive frog, I'm assuming. And the entire story takes place in the marsh. Gentlemen, I'm going to throw this out to both of you. What is, because one is a writer, the other one is an artist, what is the first thing that made you experience humor in sci-fi?
I think this would be Dave's question. Dave,
you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Dave, you're muted, buddy. There.
Say something, Dave.
He's trying. I can read lips, but you don't want to hear what he's saying.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
All right. I don't know what happened to my mic. Anyway, I don't know. My sense of humor is like all over the place. I'll find situations funny. The things that always get me are like just little things, just the one little line that they'll throw in, and sometimes it'll just catch me just right, and then it just makes me bust out laughing. A funny little, the kind of thing I like is, have you ever seen the show Firefly?
Yes.
In the show Firefly, they did this one bit where the doctor, he's very like prim and proper, and he's talking to the mechanic girl, and she's just like, and it starts off the episode, and she's just all so they're talking, and she's like, so you don't really ever swear? And he's like, well, not really. There's times where I find it appropriate, but I'm not like one of those guys that just spits out swears all the time. So they have that little conversation. Then something happens. They land on this planet, and on the planet it's like this village of miners or whatever. And one of the other characters, Jane, he's kind of an a-hole, and he's like one of the other main characters. They show up on this planet, and they go in the middle of the village, and there's this statue of Jane in the village, and the doctor just looks at it and goes, "Son of a bitch," like that. And it's just a funny little setup and punchline that just caught me, because it was like, if you watch the episode, it's just like the perfect setup for the beginning of the show. It sets up the whole rest of the episode, but it's a funny little like quick setup joke and punchline. So it's that kind of stuff. Little lines. You were talking about Star Trek. There's that one episode where they go to the planet, and it's they're all like gangsters. It's like the 1920s, and they're all sitting there waiting. They're beaming to the planet, and all the gangster guys are pointing guns at them. It's like, don't shoot. They're not dangerous till they're done twinkling. It's just funny little lines like that. Always kind of get me.
That was a memorable episode. Mr. Sweens, tell us about a memorable moment in humor in sci-fi.
I think he's muted.
Yeah, he had to step away.
Oh, okay. Well,
He's having
I'll,
his kid.
I'll come around to something that I thought actually just floored me. There was that movie with a whole bunch of midgets that were running through time bandits.
Oh, time, yeah.
Time bandits. There was a scene in it where John Cleese plays Robin Hood. He comes out of. I mean, it's a very messy little village. Everyone's dirty, and John Cleese comes out of this little hut, and he's spit polish, pure, just beautifully tailored, ready to go. There's no dirt on him at all. I mean, that moment in itself was so funny. I had to go twice to the theater because I couldn't stop laughing. I didn't get any of the jokes. I didn't understand what was going on because I was so busy crying and laughing. I missed the entire episode. That entire episode of that moment. Go ahead, Alan.
No, we're on frogs right now until Mr. Sweens can get back to us. I'll tell a quick fantasy frog joke. Guy's walking through the woods, looks down, hears a voice, looks down. Frog looks up at him and says, "I'm an enchanted princess. If you give me a kiss, I will turn into a full-size live human princess." And the guy just kind of shrugs and keeps walking, and she hops along, or the frog hops along beside, says, "No, really, I am an enchanted princess, and all you have to do is give me a kiss, and I will be your enchanted princess." So the guy reaches down, picks up the frog, puts it in his pocket. And the frog peeks out and says, "Aren't you going to give me a kiss so that I can turn into a princess?" And the guy says, "Maybe 5. I'd rather have a talking frog." Okay, that's all I got, frog-wise.
That's interesting. Regarding that, Alan, when you're writing humor, the last time we spoke on PJ's Overall Nation, you had mentioned how you try to inject it into your story. I'm curious about when you're actually creating your humor, do you take inventory of the story? What is your process? It's something that really fascinates me because you have sci-fi. This is the reason why I created this show, because you have sci-fi and it's just rigid with facts or hypotheticals, and there's absolutely no room for that humor at all. You got two different ends of the spectrum.
Well, I'm very fortunate as far as humor goes because my problem actually is suppressing the humor in my stories, because the stories almost always center around human beings. And I find the human species hysterically funny and totally illogical. And every situation seems to lead to a joke or a funny situation, and I have to actually shut it down. But as an example, there's a book called Glory Lane, and it opens in a bowling alley in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that came about because I had never read a science fiction story that opened in a bowling alley. And I just thought that would be a funny place to take. Everything takes off from there. I had no idea where I was going with that story. I just wanted to open a novel in a bowling alley, and everything went on from there. As far as why it was in Albuquerque, well, that was Bugs Bunny's fault. You know that reference? Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one line without spoiling the book, hopefully, for people who haven't read it. Basically, it's a nerd, a valley girl, and a punk, and they end up helping to save the universe, but they go through various Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I guess you'd say, sorts of adventures. And they end up on this one planet, and they're stuck in kind of a hotel room, and there's a gigantic screen in there which has access to the central computer of the planet and will theoretically answer any question. So the Valley Girl goes up to it, and one of the other guys goes up to it, if I'm remembering my own story correctly, and asks a question and gets an answer, and that's the nerd, and the punk doesn't care. And so the Valley Girl goes up to it and says, what's the secret of the universe? Or excuse me, the secret of existence. And the nerd's really surprised that this, totally profound question comes out of this girl who says, most of the time. And the giant planetary computer gets a little confused, and it looks like it might blow up, and everybody's a little nervous. And finally, the answer comes back, shopping. And the girl says, see, I told you. So, okay. It plays better in the book.
You had to be there, or had to read there.
You need the full build-up. But that's that's just something I would expect a gal like that to say, and then the answer comes back, and she was right all along, while the smart guy was wrong. And you try to upend people's expectations with humor, like the flying horse who can't is afraid of heights. There's a lot more humor in the Spellslinger series, and the fairies who are overweight and can't fly, so the hero puts them on an aerobics program. And the unicorn who the bad guys try to lure away from helping the good guys by tying a maiden to a tree, and the unicorn's not interested because he's gay. He's not interested in virgins. The Clydesdale down the street, however, you get the idea.
Sean, tell us about your early experience with humor and sci-fi.
The earliest? This is probably going to be like sacrilege to some of you guys. Well, I was born in the early 80s, and the first time I came in contact with any type of sci-fi that was very comical would have to be a little movie called Spaceballs, because it was a very slapstick, silly movie, but it was a spoof on Star Wars, of course, and that's probably my earliest memory. And I remember him using the Schwartz and hitting the guard in the balls, and I was a little kid, and I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And so that's my earliest memory of sci-fi and comedy mixed together. And yeah, Star Wars was huge in my family, so seeing that.
It's not Schwartz. The Schwartz.
The Schwartz.
The Schwartz. You got to pronounce these things like Mel Brooks would pronounce them.
The Schwartz, yes.
The Schwartz. Yes.
So that's my first memory of it. So, yeah.
Sean, what has kept you with humor and sci-fi? What has captured your attention since then?
I don't know. I kind of got away from sci-fi for a long, until more recently. It's not always comedy that brings me back into it, of course. It's just the storytelling, and especially nowadays, since there's such a fine line between reality and sci-fi, because it's all starting to come true. And recently, it has nothing to do with comedy, but recently this movie Ex Machina, it was about an AI woman, and that really got me back into sci-fi recently, and I've been delving more into it. But I do like when the dry humor is in sci-fi and it kind of catches you off guard. I think that's pretty awesome. But yeah, I don't go out looking for it per se. It just
comes to you. How do you approach your humor in visually or with words in your comic book? How do you approach your humor in that way?
In my book, it's very over the top type of it's more, I guess, slapstick type humor, like very physical comedy. It's not like beating you over the head with it. We just kind of slide it in here and there, and every couple pages there's something really kind of over the top silly, like our frog getting hit in the genitals at one point, and he screams my cloaca, like he's not, he's because that's what he has now, and he screams that out, and he vomits, and it's just over the top silliness. Like it's not like brilliant writing or anything like that. It's
Thanks a lot.
What's that?
So thanks a lot for that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, your writer.
Your writer's right here.
We have Denali, Brent Benson, who's just joined us.
Hey guys, thank you for sharing me the link. Hello guys,
Brent,
the Oddity team.
Brent, this is Sean and Dave from Oddity, and Alan Dean Foster.
Oh yes, I am a big fan of his writing.
His writing.
Back.
Don't talk to him in the third person. He's right here.
Oh wait, he is? I thought that was a figment of my imagination.
Now the figs are out on the tree, and I'm sorry, the jokes are just going to get worse and worse as the show goes on.
You know what? It's his show, so.
I got a tie for Sean. This is for Sean. Hey, Sean, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, here's how we're going to tie some science fiction humor that you alluded to into reality.
Uh-huh.
You all familiar with Tesla, the car?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, top of the line Teslas originally came out with not an overdrive, because there is no overdrive on the cars, but what you could call an overdrive for extra fast speed, and was originally called insane, and then the next mode was called ludicrous.
Nice.
The next one that's coming out with the newest version, which will probably be later this year, is called plaid.
Nice.
And it's all from Spaceballs. So there's your tie: reality, science fiction humor, and Spaceballs. So no problem. You have no problems mentioning it, Sean, since it's now involved with a multi-billion-dollar corporation that takes it just as seriously as all the rest of us do.
Barf. I mean, barf. I'm a half dog, half friend. I'm my own best friend.
Brent, Denali,
Yes.
Tell us about your first experience with humor and sci-fi.
It was painful. A whale fell on me. I had to reincarnate, and then this guy kept killing me each and every single time. I got tired of it. I'm not hiding out. If you see a man with a towel, please tell me. He keeps killing me for whatever reason. So please stop. Stop, sir. Stop. I feel sorry for the depressed robot as well.
That is one of my favorite series. That and he did Dirk Gently. Both of those are just great. I love his humor.
Again, that's what Frank Russell is like. That's what a lot of his humor is like. It's that dry British sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
90% of it nobody gets, but the 10% that's good is great beyond imagining.
Oh yeah.
I guess that's the 42. Makes sense.
Actually, it's shopping, but you weren't here for that, so.
Sorry, I was at the restaurant at the end of the universe, so took me a little bit. Oh.
So what has kept you, Denali, in humor and sci-fi? What has continued to capture your attention?
It's scientifically funny, so I keep trying to test out. Is this funny? And the British guy next to me says, "No, it isn't. Try again." But it's a parrot, and he says, "No, it isn't." But it's a parrot that talks, and I've seen 1,000 of those, and it goes on, and I'm saying, "This parrot gets talk." It's like, yes, it can. Yes, it can. Trust me.
It can't be a dead parrot.
I think that dead parrot's. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're the first person I ever met who's named after the highest mountain in Alaska.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry.
I am glad that you have recognized that. People always ask me, where does Denali comes from? And I said, from Alaska. So now you know.
The Denali
See?
finale. Yes.
Yes, the most highest one. So it's amazing.
Peter, you shouldn't expect this to be serious all the way through. It's supposed to be a panel or a discussion on humor. So if things get out of hand, it's your own fault.
I'm sorry, guys. This is my first time. I just been on YouTube for the last 9 years.
9 year, you rookie.
Oh, they've been shadow banning me long before that.
Just now, they only done that only 9 years ago. Come up with the times. Get with the times, sir.
The tech support just got around to my complaint.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you wouldn't be in the it crowd.
Yeah. They're probably it's their random trash, support. Okay, listen, guys. I got to ask regarding just the stuff that's going on currently. I'm not talking about Star Trek Picard or DS9, all that stuff. I'm talking about in literature.
Far space.
That I was getting to.
Okay.
Not bad. There's a lot of stuff that's actually coming to us in literature and also TVs and movies and stuff like that. At what point do you actually say, you know what, that's funny, I'm going to go to the theater, spend my money to have a laugh, compared to staying at home and waiting for the thing to stream? At what point do these guys make your decisions, and how do you make decisions, and why do you make your decision?
I don't go to that many movies. I'll say most of the time I don't go to the movies until summertime. That's about when we get the whole family together, and the weather's nice, because we have a nice drive-in theater. So when we go to see movies, you can see 2 for the price of 1 at the big drive-in theater. So usually we'll wait till summer, and then it's a lot of it's like what the kids want to see. But if there's something, there isn't a whole lot of like comedies that really come out that anymore. I mean, you got romantic comedies and stuff, but it's hard to find something that really appeals to me. But I'll see stuff, and like the stuff that really appealed to me is like Zucker Brothers type stuff. If I'm going to go to something and laugh, I really want to go to something and laugh. But they don't make those kind of comedies anymore. But a lot of the Marvel stuff, they'll throw in the jokes and stuff like that. So you can only get, there's only so much humor, because especially with something like the superhero things, because they have to have a lot more story or whatever, and it's not supposed to be a comedy movie.
Yeah.
But I like when they throw in the little jokes and stuff, and that's generally where I'm seeing most of the comedy nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't get to make any decisions in my house. My wife makes all those, and then after her, it's the children. So I get the scraps. I don't really get to make calls. If I get to watch anything, it's late at night after everyone's asleep. That's about the only time I get to enjoy any movies or anything. And that doesn't happen too often.
I was watching a very funny movie called Schindler's List. Anybody watched it? It was really funny. I was laughing throughout the whole thing. I was like Liam Neeson taking out the Nazis by politely saying no and hiding people. I was like, yeah, that's so funny. It's a 62-year-old man taking on the regime.
Why you've got the mask on your avatar.
Oh, yeah. Yes, the immortal mask.
It's a comic book Denali has just put out. No, not put out. It just premiered.
Yes, just premiere. So this is the mask, the immortal mask for my comic book project that I unveiled just a couple of days ago. I did an interview at Orville Nations with PJ last night. So if anybody's interested, you're more than welcome. And I just came from another stream, Alterna Comics, doing my pitch and showing the work off, and everybody's been positive about the work. But to get back on topic, the last time I paid to watch a movie, I paid it in blood, and I was watching Blazing Saddles because I will always pay that in blood.
I think part of the problem is that most of the good comedy writers have gravitated towards television and specials, Netflix and Amazon. And to find a film that appears actually in your local theater that is intended as a comedy is become very difficult. And as far as a science fiction comedy, it just doesn't exist unless it's something that comes from Pixar. There's a lot of very funny stuff in Wall-E, for example, which I did see in the theater. And that's also real science fiction, if we will. And the humor grows out of the situations and the characters. But most people don't write that stuff for live actors in a theater anymore. We just don't get it.
It's harder to do comedy than it is to do drama. And I think that's why you see a lot of comedians able to do dramas, but not a lot of dramatic actors able to do comedy. So
you'll see a lot of like comedic actors actually, they start off doing tons of comedies, and then it's almost like all of them transition later to doing dramas. I remember I was listening to I can't remember. There was a podcast with a big time comedian was the host, and they were talking about the death of God, I'm just killing it with names today. It was the guy that did Uncle Buck.
John Candy.
Yeah, they were talking about John Candy and how he had passed and stuff, and he had passed a few years ago, and the guy was like, yeah, about this time in his career, if he was still alive, he'd be doing the more like John Goodman type roles, the more like dramatic roles. Mm-hmm. It's like that's like the evolution of a career of a comedic actor. They start off doing comedy, and then they kind of slowly get to more serious roles later.
Wow. I mean, perfect example is Tom Hanks. You remember his early work is all funny. Later works, now you have Tom Hanks as a naval officer fighting the German U-boats. Wolfhound, go now.
We got Orville Nation in the chat, and I mean, you want humor in sci-fi. I've only ever seen a few episodes, but I really liked it. Was the Orville? The Orville really knows. And what's great is a lot of times, especially with Star Trek, everything's pretty straightforward, and you know there's not a whole lot of conflict between the characters. I think that was a Roddenberry thing. He didn't like conflict between the characters. But you take those same scenarios and you make them talk and act like real people, and that's when the show becomes funny. Mm-hmm. Is when they start acting like real people put in that same kind of situation.
I want to throw in a pitch for an early Tom Hanks film called The Burbs.
Oh, yeah.
Very highly underrated film, and Carrie Fisher's in it. So there's your science fiction connection, if you will.
Absolutely.
Wonderful film. And also, speaking of comedy and, it being harder than drama, I once rode up in an elevator in Tempe, Arizona with Doris Roberts, who was the mother-in-law, in Everybody Loves Raymond. Yeah. And it was a very brief conversation because it's not a very tall hotel. And complimenting her, and she said, dying is easy. She was an elderly lady at the time. Mm-hmm. So dying is easy, comedy is hard, which is an old saw, but it's true for science fiction comedy as anything else.
I think the last good science fiction comedy that I saw that I still watch to this day is Galaxy Quest.
Oh, I love that movie.
You guys,
that's a great one.
And you show a lot of the comedic chops of all these actors. I mean, you have Tim Allen. He's always a funny guy. So Sigourney Weaver, you always think of her more as Ripley from Aliens, but then you remember, oh wait, she was also in Ghostbusters, and that's also a funny sci-fi film. Plumbers basically for the underworld ghost. And studios don't want to take risk anymore because comedies are in that type of genre are big risk. They're always looking for that formula that if we do this will always make money. That's why Disney is so happy with Marvel, because they have the Marvel formula. If we put these ingredients together, it's going to make a lot of money. And that's what I think a lot of like Steven Spielberg, um, a lot of the other directors been pointing out in their articles, saying, look, these are not film, these are theme rides kind of deal.
Yeah.
And the same thing with this one is, there's kind of like an essence of each comedian that, if you don't get the timing right, it just falls flat. It just becomes, obnoxious instead of funny. And that's really the thin line between being really funny and being like, oh, great. Put the laugh track.
Yeah, it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Two things about Tim Allen, real quick. First, I understand he's really a big science fiction fan, which would explain why he's having so much fun in Galaxy Quest. And the other thing is, if you've ever watched any of his shows, Last Man Standing, or a previous show, so I can see him around in, at a table in the story session. He seems to have a lot of respect for his writers, and that shows up in Galaxy Quest too. Whether it's humor or drama, it all comes from the writing. And if you don't have good writers and people who respect what they're doing, it comes off as slapstick and it's not funny. Not because it's not slapstick, it's just, it doesn't work.
Yeah, one of the complaints I saw, and since it's sci-fi, we're talking about We'll talk about the Ghostbusters 2016. I don't want to rag on it too much, but I hated it. But it was a lot of just talk, and hopefully something funny comes out. That's what it seemed like to me. I didn't find it all that funny.
It's a difficult trick to pull off. It really is hard to pull off, especially in film, because you're actually seeing what's going on. You're not just reading it on the page.
I mean, a classic example would be the two Blues Brothers. One was literally blessed by the Pope. That's the first one. And then the second one, you don't know what happened to the second one. It just came out of a drunken stupor of a one-night stand from a woman that they don't want to remember. And I'm like saying, wow, it's almost with the same creative team, but the energy and everything wasn't the same as the first one. And I kind of feel, I think that's a lot of what a lot of people fear as well, is when you're trying to make sequels for classics or sequels for a really well put together movie, that they already told the stories and you can't recapture that comedic timing, of those movies as well. So I think it's really difficult as well.
Yeah.
Sequels are the hardest thing to do. And that's why you didn't see a lot of the early comedians. They understood this. People like Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton, they would make a film success, but they would never make a sequel to it. Charlie Chaplin once said that, I got to throw this in, that a man stepping on a banana peel is not funny. A man stepping over a banana peel into an open manhole, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the right way of subverting your expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I first saw Ghostbusters as a kid, in the 80s, there was no humor involved. It was like a very scary movie for a kid. And it wasn't until I was older and I started understanding, once I got older, I realized, there are some pretty, raunchy jokes that go on in that movie that, as a kid, I thought was just a horror movie. Like I didn't realize they were all comedians in this movie or anything like that. And then later on, I see it, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe my parents were like cool with me watching this as a 4 or 5-year-old.
I mean, I think anybody who grew up early 90s, late 80s were watching rated R movies left and right. I remember watching RoboCop, and that's humor. And literally, you get a depressed Dutchman coming in and blowing the bejesus out of Peter Wilder and just say, more blood, spray it over.
Yeah,
and they're like, and all the actors are looking at you, insane? Okay.
I remember watching that as a kid, and not thinking much of it, and then I saw it more recently, and I was like, "This is one of the most violent movies I've like." The kill scenes are so over the top. Like, I was watching it in tears, just cracking up at how ridiculous of a movie it was. But it's awesome. Like,
and that was the point, because he was watching how the commercials of the 80s US commercial were like, have fun with Bud and and bikini splashing, and then the next is today's news, we have a tragedy of 13 people killed, shut up in the downtown mall, more later today, kind of deal. That contrast kind of, and he developed that story. I mean, the part that was funny is they had to cut down the tone of Kenny's death, the executive that got killed at the beginning of the movie. And they literally had to bring the actor back to do reshoots on that scene. And he said, F them, make it more. And they kept blowing them up. And that's why you have South Park when they have Kenny. Oh my God, they killed Kenny. It's really a reference to that scene.
I never realized that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. Just based on conspiracy theory, Hollywood was able to cash in with Men in Black, Mars attacks, easily, just on the conspiracy theory topic. And who would have thought? Ghostbusters is part of that too. Who would have thought? Conspiracy theories could be a cashable, Hollywood's thing for comedy. But the thing that's, do you recall any time travel movie other than Back to the Future that was funny?
Time Cop.
I guess that was kind of funny.
Let me do splits. I'm Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm going to stop you, Senator, from stealing money from the past to fund your presidential campaign in the future. Hussa!
Now, I did
tell you a quick. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Tell you a quick Jean-Claude Van Damme story.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
I used to go to the gym at a hotel up here before they opened a decent gym in Prescott. And I went in one day, and he was in there. They were making The Ultimate Soldier or something with Dolph Lundgren, and they were shooting a lot of exteriors in the central and northern Arizona area. And there was nobody else in there but me and him. And I didn't bother him because you don't want to bother people. Mm-hmm. But the gal who was at the desk in the gym was absolutely melting in her boots, I guess. And she went over and asked him, said, Are you really Sean? And he looked up at her and he said, Yeah, I'm the short version, because he's not a very big guy. And I became a fan at that moment. I thought that was a nice thing to say. Sorry, it's not related to anything else anybody's saying, but I don't get to tell that story real well. So.
I know he
tell a Jean-Claude Van Damme story if you go.
Well, let me add something interesting about Jean-Claude Van Damme and being short. He was apparently the first Predator in it didn't work out.
He was a lobster. He didn't like it.
And so, they had to bring in a football player to replace him.
No, he quit because he was a giant lobster, and then they decided to get the legendary Stan Wilson to come up with the redesign from the ground up, the Predator design.
Oh yeah. Well, let me throw just as an aside, Stan was on the same plane as James Cameron, and he told him his plight as they were heading down to South America, and James Cameron did a quick sketch of the Predator.
Yeah, I read that.
On a napkin. Man, those napkins are important. I wasn't kidding with that artist saying how much for the SketchCon napkin.
Oh, that's great. There was another science fiction comedy called Evolution. Where they literally took the concept and they took it to the nth degree in terms of humor, with the great David Duchovny starring in it.
Yes.
And now a lot of people talk seriously about evolution and passionately, believing and not believing in it. But this movie actually took it to comedic levels that were incredible. Have any of you seen the movie? And if you have, what's your fond memory of it?
I have seen the movie. I saw it recently, actually. We just rewatched it a few weeks ago because it's on Netflix, and it's very it in its structure. It's very Ghostbusters. There's a lot of similarities the way it's set up, but David Duchovny is really good in it. I love again freaking on the his buddy there, the one that played the rock guy, the scientist. He was really cool. He was really funny in it. And I can't think of any specific joke in it that I really liked, but I remember overall, the structure being very, and I think John Landis actually directed it, so that's why it was very Ghostbusters-ish. But that movie was great. I just saw it recently and I loved it.
It was Orlando Jones that was with
Orlando Jones, yes, and I liked him in a lot of stuff. You don't see him around anymore, but he was a really funny guy.
Yes, he was. The fond memory I take from the movie Evolution was that one of the characters, the students,
mm-hmm.
he was there. They needed selenium,
yeah,
to take down the creature, and he said, well, yeah, here's all the selenium you need. How did you know? Well, it comes in this nice aerosol can that is for your hair.
Yeah, it was Head and Shoulders shampoo.
Yeah.
Anybody seen Morons from Outer Space?
That was what, sir. That was the next movie I was going to bring up.
Good, I'm not alone. Morons from Outer Space, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a 1965 British film that probably will not show up on Netflix or HBO or any place else. You're going to have to kind of look it up. But basically, it's about this touring family that's very Simpsons-like, who are on vacation, and their guide decides to stop at Earth, and the family disengages their part of the spacecraft accidentally from the main part of the spaceship and ends up down on Earth. And the guide, I think his ship gets damaged, so he can't go get them. And these people end up on Earth. There's a hilarious shot of their part of the spaceship going down the M5 outside of London, absolutely destroying traffic. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. And they get picked up finally, and they're locked up, and everybody's being very serious about it, the British government, the British military. And the father is just stuck in a room with government scientists and generals who want to know how his spaceship works. And they ask him, he says, I don't know, I just turn the key and it goes.
Yeah.
And after a couple of minutes of this, somebody comes running in holding up a magazine saying, I understand. I've got it. It's all right here. And it's a copy of Amazing Stories. It's a wonderful little film.
That was by the British duo Jones and Smith, if I recall correctly.
I believe you are correct, yes.
Yeah. That was in syndication. I liked the early 90s. They would show all the old show PBS Sci-Fi when it was sci-fi and not sci-fi.
A long time ago. And if you guys haven't seen it, if you can ever come across it, it's a unique little film. But I treasure it just for that scene that I just described.
Well, thank YouTube. There's clips, and if you're lucky, you hit the YouTube at the right day, you'll probably see the whole movie until somebody takes it down.
Yep.
And to tie it back to before, Morons from Space caused Mel Brooks to change the original titles of Spaceball. It was originally Planet Morons, and he had to change it to Spaceball because of this movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Learn something every day.
Yeah. So, trivia. Spoiler. No.
All right. What is okay? Then let me throw this out in terms of books, comic books, anything. The last sci-fi comedy that you have come across, or something that's even close to being a sci-fi comedy, because in terms of literature, you really have to you have to go looking for it. It's not being pushed to you like movies and TVs are. That's a push technology. They're constantly throwing it at you, whether you're online or you're watching TV. But when it comes to literature, you have to actually go looking for it. What's your process, everybody?
For just looking for it?
Yeah, looking for it. I mean, at some point, is it what you're feeling for that day? Is it something that, you know what, I need to be happy. I need to read something happy. What makes you go out looking for funny stuff to read?
I haphazardly stumble on it usually.
That's
I'll be looking through a bunch of different books or whatever, because I never know what I feel like reading if I'm at the bookstore. So I'll be looking through books and just kind of reading the back, and then something will just kind of catch my attention. And especially if it looks really funny, then I will definitely I'll pick it up. There's a book I have, and I can't remember the title, but basically the plot was these aliens come down to Earth, and for whatever reason, and the whole thing is kind of satire of Walmart and corporate culture. These aliens come down and they think for whatever reason that we own Jupiter because we're the only intelligent beings in the solar system. So they want to mine Jupiter. So they come down to negotiate mineral rights to Jupiter. And what they negotiate is modern technology, technology that we don't have. It's not even close. And the main guy in the story has just invented this like real simple hologram type video game or whatever, something real basic. The aliens come down and all their technology is like super far advanced, and they just give it to us in exchange for Jupiter, and it destroys the economy because now nobody, it was basically given for free. Nobody can even come close to it. So this guy has to figure out a way to make money now, because we're like the poorest part of the galaxy, because we have nothing really to contribute because everybody's so far advanced. And it goes into, he invents something that can be used by the aliens, a real simple device, and he has to go to basically a convention, and they have to pitch the idea to, they don't call it Walmart, but when you're reading it, you know that that's what they're talking about, because they have to pitch it to the biggest, store or whatever retailer in the galaxy, and then they have to do all this. They have to basically make all these big time promises to this thing. I can't remember something contract. I wish I could remember the title, but it was really funny the way they had it laid out, and the way they really got into the like corporate structure, and like they literally had to pay for air at the convention. And it was just really interesting and really funny the way they did it.
I wrote a story once called Invasion, where the aliens come here and they don't hurt anybody. Basically, they just start buying everything up. And before you know it, whatever corporation or company you're working for is owned by the aliens, and there's no reason to shoot anybody. And they get everything they want without going to war. I had a conversation about humor and science fiction with Judy Lindell Ray many years ago before she passed on. And she looked up at me and she said, humor and science fiction doesn't sell. I was absolutely convinced of that. And I had studied, humorous science, Glory Lane and Quozel and stuff like that. And it didn't matter to her. She said humor. And so that certainly is one reason why it's hard to find. Fantasy, no problem. You want humorous fantasy, that's easy. But humorous science fiction, the industry, I don't think it's changed. They just don't believe anybody wants it.
Well, let me put this out to everybody. Two extremes from different eras or different times in our waking lives, possibly, is that you have Dark Star and you have Idiocracy. Both of which, one is as hardcore science fiction as you can get, with a lot of the concepts and theories that you can throw out into a movie, and it's funny. And then you have Idiocracy, where it takes a moment to kind of figure out what's going to happen in the future based on how man populates and stuff like that. And for some reason, it's pretty accurate. And they're both funny.
It's happening a lot sooner. that they predicted.
Exactly.
That the only thing they miss in that movie is that they still haven't discovered how to give bald men back their hair, because that was the main thing. That once they unlocked the secret to regrowing their hair, they just gave up and went downhill from there.
I just have to mention, showing the enduring strength of science fiction that is funny. Centipede Press is preparing a limited 300 copy edition of none other than Dark Star.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Nice.
Uh-oh.
For them, what's interested.
I think the problem with selling humor in sci-fi is there was so much serious sci-fi that made money, Star Wars and Star Trek and all that. They try any new property that comes up, they want it to be as successful as that. And it's really hard. What did we get for funny sci-fi? We got Spaceballs, which is a parody of Star Wars and Star Trek. And so that's kind of sold as what's humorous. It's hard to come up with an original humorous idea, because a lot of the humor that you see in sci-fi, that I see anyway, is basically plays off of the serious sci-fi tropes. So it's hard to come up with an original, or at least it seems like it. It would seem so, or maybe nobody wants to buy it. None of the studios want to buy an original comedy that's science fiction.
Well, and I'll go back with this point, is that studios are very risk averse with projects, so they always look for something that was before, so they can kind of gauge it. Like, for example, you mentioned Star Wars. Star Wars has a lot of physical comedy. It's not, obvious for the original trilogy. There's a lot of physical comedy that harkens back to like Flash Gordon and all those series. And George Lucas had to show the Fox executive, this is what I'm looking at with these paintings. And I believe, Mr. Foster, you also had some dealing with that as well in your past.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get any humor into any science fiction film, never mind an original film. But when I was doing the novelization of The Force Awakens, for example, we'd throw in a few little bits that I thought were funny that came directly out of the story, and they were all cut. Every one of them. Even where I thought it added to the storyline and it added to the characters in that particular moment. But anything I did that was even vaguely humorous was excised. So, and that's just the novelization, never mind, like David says, an original.
Right. And I think there was a story about George's first wife, who was editing the first movie with her friends, who all this ended up winning Academy Awards for that year. But she was the one who urged George to keep those humorous moments in the film, because he was screen testing them. And one of the example was the little robot toaster that is, on the ground, and it gets scared from Chewbacca and it runs away. That was a humorous moment, and the audience were laughing about that. And George at that time was saying, no, let me cut this out. And she's like, no, let those are moments for the audience to breathe. And I think that's something that people throughout through Hollywood through the decades have slowly forgotten, that comedy is also a moment to empathize with the character. You have everybody in our own life have a moment of having something funny where we just laugh at the end of whatever happens, because it's a release. And I think people don't know how to do that anymore.
Yeah, well, it brings a little bit of humanity. Like I'll relate it to, if you ever watch like NCIS or any of those shows that are about the military, and everybody always sings yes sir, no sir, and they're all kind of straight laced or whatever, how they act and how they talk. I was in the Navy for 9 years, and nobody talks like that. They all talk like regular people. I mean, you have certain phrases and stuff, military phrases and all that stuff that you use, but people aren't all uptight all the time. And yes sir, no sir. I mean, you're not allowed to call people by their first names, as far as like officers and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, there's when you join the military, you don't become a robot. You're still a regular person doing regular stuff. And it's when you see like you see some of these, these movies where they're in Vietnam or whatever, and they have those moments where they're joking and laughing. That's to me is a lot more real. And there's some like that funny bit in God, I'm terrible at this. But
Forrest Gump, it shot me in the buttocks.
Yeah, or when he's like there's the big Vietnam movie. I can never remember it. Anyway, they're interviewing him, and he's like, "Yeah, I came to a new and interesting culture to meet these new and interesting people and shoot them."
Full Metal Jacket.
Just a funny, Full Metal Jacket. That's right. That's just a funny little line, and it really it totally subverts what you're expecting. And when you got little stuff like that breaks the tension because there's so much serious stuff going on in that movie.
Like at the
Peter,
movie, after they kill the sniper and they burn down the city and they're all singing Mickey Mouse as they're it's hilarious.
Peter, guys, I'm gonna have to bow out. Real life intrudes.
All right.
Hey, thank you for being here, Alan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it was very nice speaking with you.
Nice to meet you all. And my wife collects frogs. Should know.
We like her already.
Not live frogs, but little frog statues and frog art and frog this and frog that. So found it very appropriate to be on the show with both of you guys.
We'll have to send you a book.
Yes. So adios and continue on without me, please.
Well,
all right. Thank you very much.
Take it easy.
Yep.
Our next book is we're going to play off the conspiracy, and it's going to be all about the gay frogs. raging gay frogs.
I thought you were going to do a Jurassic Park and say, we created dinosaurs using frog DNA.
We'll say he was created using dinosaur DNA.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's funny that you say, those little moments. The one moment that really caught my attention was Star Trek 4. Mm-hmm. Shatner and Nimoy get on the bus, and then all of a sudden they get off the bus, and he looks around and goes, "What did he mean exact change?"
One of my favorite lines from that movie is like, "Now everybody remember where we parked." Because they put the big ship in the park, and then they put the cloaking device on.
Yeah, that was a good gag too. Go ahead, Sweet.
There's a YouTube video called WTF moments of Star Trek from the original series, and there's this one scene where the dudes are on the ground acting like horses and neighing. And it is one of the most hilarious and bizarre moments I've ever seen on film. And I'll share it with you guys in the chat room. But you'll watch it and be like, "What the?" I mean, you guys probably have seen it and whatever. But when I saw that, I was like, "What in the world is this?" Because I never watched the original Star Trek series. It just never.
What, you didn't see Pike in his chair going, beep, beep?
That was the exciting stuff.
That was
the best part of Star Trek is the interaction between Kirk, Spock, and Bones.
McCoy.
That's where when you see humor in the show, that's where a lot of it comes from. Is just the interaction between those three.
And it's kind of interesting because one of the reasons why the first season was kind of disjointed was because they were trying to push Riker as the main character, and they were trying to go like the 80s, a lot of external conflicts and conflict with the characters. And one of the things he was against about was, no, this is in Star Trek. This is nothing about Star Trek, and they kind of, say, no, we know better, Gene. And, he kind of like, after the first season, he stepped back and said, fine, do what you want to do. And they kind of realized as like the first half of the season, they were doing what they were doing, and then they kind of understood you have to do the humanistic perception of what Star Trek was, the original ones, and to make people interested. So if you see like the first season and second half of the second season, or the first half of the second season, it's really a real mess. It wasn't until like halfway through the second season that it actually found its footing and everybody started enjoying it. That's why everybody started, making the meme, the Riker beer, because it got beard and everything started clicking, because they realized, while it's true that there needs to be conflicts, you also can't make people into a-holes as well. You got to make them likable. Which is why you start seeing that Patrick Stewart's Picard, he was very unlikable in the first season, in the first couple episodes of the second season, and then you see the shift to being from a very stern, I'm Captain Picard, and no children running on my ship kind of deal. And they did the whole Picard kids things. You start seeing the shift, and he's more comfortable allowing that. Same thing with Riker, where he was supposed to be the leading man. He felt more comfortable as they moved him back to what he was supposed to be, an executive officer. And you start seeing the relationship build between these characters. And that's where the drama comes from, which what you mentioned before, the Orville. The Orville works because they know, what the conflicts of these characters are. They're not in conflict with each other. They're in conflict with the situation that involves the other person. So
I think that the tough part of a show, especially Next Generation, was like this, but a lot of shows are like this, is when you get the first episode, they have to introduce the characters, so everybody, their personality is really sort of over the top for that character, because in that first episode you have to establish, their personality, so that everybody, okay, yeah, we know what's going on now for the rest of the story and for the rest of the the rest of the season, the rest of the show.
Well, and
Star Trek is tough because what they were doing in Next Generation, they had to do that, but they also had to make it Star Trek. So they had to have all the same kind of Star Trek stuff from the original series, and then they had to introduce all new characters, and it especially for a first season like that, it wasn't definitely not my favorite season.
Right. And sorry, because I'm getting a little bit excited talking about good Star Trek compared to what we have. So I look forward to anything that makes me happy, kind of deal. But one thing that I am looking at, one thing that an editor said that from one of my favorite book series, told to the author, and the editor said, you always have to present your first book, as the only book that you're going to ever publish, because you never know if people are going to resonate with it. So you have to show the extremes side of that character before you can pull back to the nuance part. Because if the audience don't know what that character is about at the most extreme point, why would they follow on with when they're things are a little bit more calmer and things are more fleshed out? So that's why these characters in any medium are in those extremes. So perfect example would be John McClane in Die Hard. He's in this extreme situation to show his heroic, because if you show him in a normal sense, he doesn't work. He's just another schmo in the another cop. That it's like, whatever, why are we watching it? But when we see him taking out all the terrorists and throwing Alan Rickman off the building, Fox building, you see him at his heroic, and you want to root for him and you want to follow him to the next movie and all that stuff, kind of deal.
Or how about was it Schwarzenegger? I think it was Commando. Was it? He had the guy over a cliff with an arm. It's Sully, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened? What happened? Where's Sully? I had to let him go.
Yeah.
It was those short Schwarzenegger lines.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll be back. And little gags like that after Terminator that had me constantly following him everywhere.
Oh, I love those old movies. Everything about them.
Mr. Free, chill out.
Yeah, just
Exactly.
just not taking itself too serious.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, maybe they still make movies kind of like that today, but I don't find them. I don't see them.
Well, we had back in the '80s, Weird Science.
Oh,
Yes, John
Yeah.
Hughes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was what, a romantic sci-fi.
Yep.
It,
that was a
They made
wonderful
a TV show as well.
10, 10, 11 years ago, we had Pluto Nash by
Yeah.
the great Murphy.
Well, I'm glad we didn't have to have a Hillary Clinton bill, dollar bill.
Um,
I'm glad that part of the movie didn't come to pass.
how about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Mhm.
1 and 2.
Speaking of which, they're pulling Rick Morales to make another
Mhm.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kid with a grown-up son now.
Yeah.
We'll see how.
Remaking that. Yep.
Yeah,
that's quite a feat. I mean, the gentleman actually, walked away from Hollywood to be an actual father and
Yeah.
give attention to his children.
and I hope. I mean, his children are grown up by this time, and I hope that the quality of the script is what pulled him back into place. Which, speaking of which, I think one of the reasons why Bill Murray never wanted to do another Ghostbusters sequel was because of his poor experience in the Ghostbuster 2. Because
I don't think he wanted to do Ghostbusters 2, to tell you the truth.
Well,
I think he was fine with Ghostbusters the way it was.
Yeah, it was perfect.
right. And I think, but when they brought him on board and,
Mhm.
and finally convinced him, they pitched him another different movie, and they had another script. And when he got on set to do everything, the whole script had changed to be more in line with the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And that really kind of like, you know what, never again. And that's why you see him do a lot of Wes Anderson, because while you still have the aesthetics of the old films, it's always a different setting and a different anthology. Kind of like,
Gentlemen, we have an actual author here.
oh, goody.
Yeah, we have 3 authors. Well, I don't consider myself an author. I consider myself a storyteller, but that's just me. Adega, Denali, David, Sweens.
Lou.
Hello, folks.
Yeah.
The real author left just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we were humbled, and the air left the room with us.
Yes.
The rest of us just pretend.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. We just hope to be in his shadow. So, Adega, tell us about your experience in humor and sci-fi. What was your first experience?
Some of the original Star Trek, there was some of the scenes in the Tribble, those type of, and then Lost in Space had quite a bit of it, the original series.
Yes.
But I can't, other than the Tribble, I remember there's a whole set of music in the Star Trek where you could hear it, and it would actually make, the music would change, and you're supposed to laugh at it. And I think I was really young then. I started to learn what television comedy was actually right off of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to mention that. The music, yes. While everyone else had a laugh track on TV and stuff like that, in Star Trek, their laugh track was the music.
The goofy music.
Yeah. I think I saw that more with you know what? It actually would make sense because Star Trek was produced by Lucy Ball's company, and you would see that same music track in her productions with I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners and all those type of shows that were produced by her studio. So yeah, it would make sense on that.
That's right. You know what? Now that we're just a little past the 1 hour mark, I just want to add this little shill moment, so that way we have oddity, ladies and gentlemen. We have a great humor.
Oh, hold on.
What's that?
Last time I looked at it, it was only like 16,000.
There's no way. There's something wrong.
No. It's Canadian dollars.
It's
Canadian
Oh,
dollars.
holy mackerel!
He had a heart attack. He's like saying, he's like, "Wow, we made it, guys! We made it. We broke the double
I almost had a
digits."
heart attack just now.
Hey, wait a minute. Let's look at it. What it looks like in. Oh my God, the Mexican peso.
How much
Love,
do you want?
mucho love with the Mexican.
Oh my God!
Wow, you can get a mansion and a yacht.
Yeah.
There you go.
A two-seater canoe.
We have Oddity, ladies and gentlemen, who's going to be looking at the stream right now and the playback. Is a great book by Sean and Dave here. Dave's the writer, Sean's the artist. There's a lot of wonderful perks. It's a very funny book, and they have the great Ethan Van Sciver collaboration on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very humorous book. I was lucky enough to gleam at it. It is funny, and don't take my word for it. Buy it and prove me wrong.
Here you see the frog attacking, you think he's gonna hurt him, and he just smacks him in the eyeballs. That's pretty funny. I like that.
Yeah, it is.
I'm like looking at the panels and I'm thinking, man, this is where Swamp Things would come in.
That's right.
Now, if you go up to the tongue, hitting them in the face, it's really pretty funny. I think it's a few pages up.
It's one of the few books that I know that it has a lot of tongue lashing.
Yes.
There it is.
See, right here, people love this because it looks like a ball sack hitting them in the face.
Hillbilly got licked.
So guys, give us your pitch. Tell us about the book.
All right. So basically, Oddity was this teenage kind of dirtbag who, and we did the book. This book isn't the origin, but this book we get right into the action. But basically, he was this teenage dirtbag that gets turned into this little frog monster, and then the swamp is like it's like magic. There's like this spirit in the swamp, and it tells him, you know, you're gonna take care of this swamp now. You're gonna be the guardian of the swamp. I need you to keep people out and keep all the weird little urban legend type creatures in. And he sucks at his job, basically, because he's apathetic. He's not mean or anything like that, but he's a typical teenager, and he's not the science nerd like like Spider-Man. He was the kid that was smoking under the bleachers, right? So basically, he screws up at his job and unleashes monsters onto the community, and now he has to learn to do his job correctly to fix it before the monsters cause too much damage.
So what's funny about the book?
What's funny about the book is we've a lot of the situations we've put it in. There's the characters are really weird. It's a town full of hicks. Basically, they're all a bunch of drunken hillbillies, and the name of the town is Macabre. There's a lot of little in jokes and stuff, a lot of little hidden jokes. The name of the town is Macabre, Louisiana. We call it Macabre because it's like death in French. So there's a couple of little macabre jokes in there as far as in jokes and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff you'll have to look in the background of the book while you're reading it. And there's some banter. There's some just weird jokes in there I put one joke in there specifically that's so obscure, maybe 5% of the audience will get it.
You're only going after 5% of the audience. Sure.
Well, that's that particular joke. We have some other jokes in there. I mean, there's some funny stuff. He gets kicked in the kicked in the groin He's like, oh, right in the cloaca. And there's just like we like to throw in a lot of little funny stuff with the banter, and we subvert a lot of the action that you think is going to happen. You think one thing's going to happen, something else happens. There's a lot of little background, again, a lot of little background type stuff. A lot of the situations is humorous.
Over the top.
All right. We heard from Dave. Sean, can you? I think Dave's a little too serious with this book. Sean, can you tell us something funny?
Okay. There'll be a scene where a cameraman gets his head ripped off and thrown through. Well, it gets tossed around a bit, and then it gets thrown through a gas station window right into the host of the show, right in front of him. And then as he sees his dead cameraman, he kind of says to himself, like, there goes the B footage, the B reel, and all that for the show. And it's just like I loved 80s horror. Like I love.
It sounds like you're inspired by that Arnold Schwarzenegger space movie. Get your ass to Mars. Total Recall.
Yeah.
Killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah, that's clowns from outer space too. Yes.
Like just the over the top kill scenes that a lot of 80s horror had, where it was just like practical effects and it didn't look real at all, and it was funny and just really goofy. Like we're incorporating a lot of that into it. Kind of like creep show type stuff in there. Some of the color palettes I picked were directly inspired by creep show. And then I love paranormal stuff. Like I was a huge fan of Art Bell and Coast to Coast back in the day and stuff. So one of our characters in there, he's like directly ripped from Art Bell, and then like a newer paranormal type guy, kind of make fun of his name, and we kind of like mashed these two characters together to create Jack Fagans, and that guy's just like he's just a big douchebag, and just a shitty person. We'll see what happens to him later on in the book, but.
I'm late to the show. Was there an arch villain to the oddity, or is it the whole town of Hicks?
Yeah, there's well, in this book there are these two hillbillies, and it's pretty obvious what happens. They end up becoming his enemies within this book, but there's kind of a higher nemesis above all of them, which will be revealed as the book goes on. But if you scroll down farther down, you'll see the two bad guys. One is just like Oddity, but he's a poison dart frog, and and then there's a snapping turtle mutant, and these are the two hillbillies that get mutated, and they start wreaking havoc, and they're just two drunks just wreaking havoc on the town, and we'll see all the insanity that comes about from it. So
it sounds like a hardcore, legit comedy here. Just pulling it in from the 80s. What do you call it, references? I'm in. I got the next person that we have is Denelli. Denelli has just premiered The Immortal Mask to the world for the first time after spending an entire year developing it. Tell us a little about The Immortal Mask.
Yes. Well, this is The Immortal Mask that you can sign up for the newsletter at theimmortalmask.com. This is the actual cover for The Immortal Mask. The cover is indicative of the interior art. This is the quality I'm looking for. And the pitch for it is basically a retired soldier down on his luck is given a covenant interview with a death row inmate. when he learns from the interview thrusts him into Atlanta's shadowy underworld, he will have to utilize his military training to survive from being hunted for the information that could topple the most powerful ruling class in the city. It is a crime noir set in 1970s Atlanta, and it's fantastic. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to show people as we're ramping up the, showing this project off, this comic book off, and and getting to the road of putting the starting line of releasing the campaign as well. So if you guys want to know more about the Immortal Mask and get exclusive updates before anybody else, join the newsletter, because those will be the first ones to know, all the cool images before I release to the public. And for those who do join in with the newsletter, they'll get access to special discounts or promotion, as we lead to the road to our campain.
All right. Okay. All right. Enough of your sales pitch. What's so funny about the mask? Where's the comedy in this little bit of sci-fi?
And there's a little bit of sci-fi.
Yeah.
You flash a flashlight to him, and he cowers. No flashlights. No photographies.
Yeah. So he's a superhero when everybody's looking in the other
Don't look at
direction.
me. He's the invisible boy. Don't look at me. You gotta stop looking at me before I can turn invisible.
Did you sneak any Holocaust jokes in the book?
Sweetie. I will not say one way or the other. You must read and find out.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, Adega, tell us about your works, and where can we find them on the internet?
Sorry, I moved the chair and it squeaks a lot. Where can you find them? What?
Where can we find your works on the internet?
The only presence I really have on the internet is either here on YouTube, but some of the stuff's been removed. And then the actual first book is on Amazon. You have to look up Evolution by Adega, and it usually pops right up. For a while, it was selling really, really well, and books go like this. I got some other promotions that are going to come up, and then it should pop it back up. There it is.
There you go.
And you can get either the Kindle or the paperback there.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, it was basically.
Actually, anyone here hear clicking sounds?
Yeah,
It's probably my side here. Let me turn off my camera.
No, it's still hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? Do me a favor. Everybody, mute yourselves for a moment. Okay, now, one at a time. Sweens. Okay, Dave.
It was Adega's mic.
It was a day. All right. Okay, everybody can come back. All right. Okay, Adega, go. Tell us about your book.
I'll turn it off when I'm not talking, because I know my machine's pretty old and I've just been babying it and it can't handle it. But basically, I came up with this idea when I was a kid, and it just mulled over in my mind for years. And since I had to retire because of my health, I decided to do something with my time, and I put this together. And it does have little bits of comedy in the first one. The second one has a little bit more. There's some time in it where, everyone hates the media, so the media doesn't do too well in the book. they get their just due, and then but it's short. It's basically about the size of 2 graphic novels to introduce you into a whole new universe. It's based in humanity's future. They are very much space exploring and colonizing civilization, but there's a lot of mysteries that the main government had no idea, or the people in it had no idea of what was going on in the universe. There was a breakaway human civilization they had no idea about, and they've been causing problems. Well, there's a few main people, one in particular, where they start figuring out, wait, there's some monkey business going on, and this could jeopardize all of humanity. And so it starts into the whole arc of how they try and correct the problem.
Nice, very nice. And you say you've been slowly sprinkling comedy into the first book, but you have it more in the second book. How come?
It's I never thought of doing comedy in it. It just happened to like the guy he's talking about, doing some things with an AI that weren't appropriate. Not that kind of things. Don't get the wrong way. Um, and then, like I said, where they took care of some nasty reporters, but no, the most of it is the books aren't set so much for comedy. It's set for um, showing my ideas what it means to be a good human.
Very good. Very good. All right. Now, before we get to our additional panelists, Stogie, I'll just talk about Alan Dean Foster, the wonderful man that was here for about an hour or so. We were graced with his presence. You can go to alandeanfoster.com, and he has his own personal blog where you can just go through his works and his thoughts here. And somewhere in here is a voluntary treatment of Episode 9, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, that Alan thought would be wonderful for the powers that be to actually do, and maybe salvage a little bit of the poor results that happened in Episode 8. But alas, that's not what happened. But you know what? It's a wonderful thing to actually read something from the man who actually wrote the novel Star Wars, and had a hand in all our childhoods as we grow up imagining just what wonderful stuff is possible in the world of science fiction. Stogie, greetings.
Yo, what's going on, guys?
Tell us a little bit about your experience in humor and sci-fi. What was your first experience?
Well, obviously, Spaceballs. Nothing else really existed back in the time. I mean, there were a handful of things here and there, but nothing major. I was also a network kid, right? So I didn't have the availability of cable. So if it didn't come out on network, or it didn't have some kind of mainstream TV or movie release, I didn't know about it.
And what has kept you interested in the comedy and sci-fi?
Well, it was something that you guys were talking about earlier. Trying to do comedy in sci-fi is a bad idea. You do sci-fi. Comedy is just the mood relief, right? When they know that they're totally screwed, you make jokes because it's easier to deal with the situation when you can laugh in the face of the abyss than be swallowed by it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think about the difference in how I would approach that stuff, right? Mel Brooks, for instance, Spaceballs, he took that general production very seriously. They were not joking around. They were actually doing cutting technology at the time to produce that movie. So the movie was taken very, very seriously, but then the reality of it is the characters are frankly somewhat morons. So you have a very serious universe with very serious outcomes and possibilities, but the people within are somewhat incompetent. So comedy ensues.
That's interesting you say that, because I didn't realize it until now. But Spaceball is quite an achievement for what it was, because it had the visual effects level of Star Wars applied to a comedic movie. But the thing is, and this is what's so great about comedic movies, is that the director would shoot the scene that they wanted, but then the actor or somebody would suggest, hey, why don't we do something like this, or try this approach, and they would shoot a little
Well,
extra film.
natural comedy. I'll give you an example. Indiana Jones. We talked about this the other night.
Yeah.
When he pulls out his gun and shoots him instead, and it only becomes funnier later on when you're informed that he had the shits and dysentery, and he wasn't able to perform all of those feats that they had initially planned for him.
No, exactly. But here's where Spaceball excels compared to Indiana Jones. Not in terms of comedy, but in technical production. They had to hit their humor right the first time, or they had to actually commit to that humor, because it's very costly at that point in time to do visual effects. They can't.
Well, and
they can't
sometimes
turn on a dime at that point.
sometimes humor isn't actually funny. It's actually an insult, right? So humor in a movie can be used two ways. One, to actually change the mood, uplift the mood, and cause people to laugh. Or it can be used as a weapon to irritate and aggravate, maybe even demoralize your enemy and make them, off on the back foot. Kind of how, like, for instance, Peter Parker does all the time in Spider-Man.
Oh my God! Yes.
Right.
That's the interesting thing about Spider-Man. Even it's not a sci-fi, but this brings
Isn't
back.
it though? Isn't it though? Think about it. You got a green psychopath who flies around on
On a glider.
on a jet hoverboard, basically Biff Tannen's hoverboard. You got Dr. Octopus, who's basically a mechanized psychopath with octopus capacity, because everything about it's sci-fi. Like Peter being able to essentially become a quasi mutant, and he's also somewhat intermixed with technology, depending on which version you watch. That's very sci-fi. That's accepting the fact that somebody could genetically be altered, right, by a spider bite, and not, have a whole shitload of necrotic dead limbs or cancer or something ensuing, which would be the real effect.
Give him some gamma rays.
Right.
Incredible
Well,
Hulk.
and the gamma rays, even of itself, if you know anything about gamma rays, you're instantly fucking dead.
Right.
That's the fantastical part of it, where the gamma rays didn't just completely melt you.
Like, and I think that's what you were talking about with like the Fantastic Four. It's a horror package as a family sitcom, where it's comedic, because you don't really think about the horror that a guy turns into a being of bricks, or another guy combust. You just think of Johnny Storm trying to, fight
what's
Spider-Man over a girl.
What's very real about comedy in certain serious movies is that when you're deeply, deeply in the shit, and I mean might literally be in a foxhole up to your knees in your own shit, that's the perfect time to make a joke, because how could it get any worse? Bombs falling around you, you're being shot at, you're shooting at people. Those are the kind of extreme situations that call for a joke, because if you lived 5 seconds longer than you planned, fuck, that's kind of funny. I'm still alive.
Yeah. You reminded me of something about Spider-Man. This is this little strip I just Googled.
Mm-hmm.
Is by Stan Lee and John Romita from the newspaper strip.
Mm-hmm. The original stuff.
Yeah, the original stuff. And you're looking at it. Just J. Jonah Jameson dialogue. Blasted traffic. I could get to the paper faster on foot if I could outrun the muggers. And then after that, it's like, wow, a full 10 cents tip. Now I can buy my own fleet. A dime, blasted. I thought it was a nickel I gave him, and he took it.
Yeah.
It's it's this kind of quick humor that just makes it incredible, awesome, actually.
Well, this sort of, to understand, like, people of today's generation might not have a clue or understand what things were like pre, like, the 2000s, but everybody kind of openly hated each other. You remember Ghostbusters, where the mayor, Ghostbusters was it two, where the mayor essentially, no, or was it one? I forget. Where the mayor essentially retorts, everybody in New York has the God-given right to hate each other or to be miserable, I think is what he said. And I actually found that to be one of the funniest scenes of that entire movie, but because it was very real, right? And it was trying to deal with the fact, okay, you're telling me that I have to make this city full of miserable people suddenly not hate each other in order to make this stop. Are you crazy?
Yeah, that's Ghostbuster 2 because of the slime. The mooch line. Yeah. Did you sleep with it? Oh, so it's the quiet ones.
But see, do you see though? Even like Ghostbusters is a good example to break down. You see how that movie started out. It was very serious. The comedy about that was that they were kind of schmoes. You know, they were intelligent. They didn't have fuck all for funding. You know, they leveraged one of their inheritances like wildly up the hill to get everything started. And in those days, you know, that was how you made a good movie. You showed that people were normal, right? And Ghostbusters is absolutely in every way a science fiction movie, right? It's the proton packs. You don't even have to go past that. The proton packs, they're carrying nuclear reactors on their back, right? Like if you tried to run around New York City with a nuclear reactor on your back, you'd have like 100 black helicopters over top of you in like 10 seconds.
And all the damages is like, I like how the hotel manager at the end said, you missed one of the chandeliers, and then it falls.
Yeah.
No, they were unlicensed nuclear reactors.
Yes.
Right. The 4 or 5, and you know, at any given moment, you remember in the second one where, oh God, I can't remember what the one guy's name, Rick Moranis, I'll just use his proper name, essentially just goes into one of the lockers and it's like, oh, hey, here's another one of the nuclear reactor John's just sitting here. And somebody who's never been trained on this shit is going to fire this thing up. The accountant is essentially going to fire this nuclear reactor up, and he's going to go stand out in front of a shitload of people and maybe shoot something at something. that can't end well.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You know, humor and sci-fi. Everyone loved Superman the movie.
Tully, there you go. That's the name.
Everybody,
yeah.
Everybody loved Superman the movie. You know, Christopher Reeve.
Mm-hmm.
That was funny, wasn't it?
Especially when he couldn't see through the lead table or lead bench.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff was trying to be funny, but it wasn't funny because it was trying to be serious, right? Like,
well, for the time, it was pretty funny. You know, the humor back then is different than the humor is now.
Absolutely, and that's why you have to take that in consideration. When
now it'd be just like, who wrote this?
Yeah, somebody's being corny.
Now, here's where the twist is. Superman. Do you consider Superman a sci-fi movie? A sci-fi?
Not at all. Not even a little bit.
Not even after you seen the Man of Steel opening, where they showed was it 5 minutes on Krypton, and it looked like something out of was it Dune? And
I thought you were going to say David Bowie started.
I mean, maybe only for the moment when we're talking about the alien planet established civilization aspect. If you dwell on that too much, then okay, yes, you would have to say that it's sci-fi. But in reality, most of it was never about that, and I think a lot of that stuff was added in after the fact. You know, they didn't start the Superman strip with him on Krypton. You know, they just started, hey, here's Superman. Everybody rally around this idea of a super American warrior. You know?
Of course, all the wonderful things that we love about Superman now have all been added.
Superman is Americana is apple pie.
Yeah. Well, let's see. For Superman, the flying was introduced in the Fleischer cartoons. Kryptonite was introduced in the radio play.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, as time progressed, and it became more apparent that Superman was going to go into other mediums, they added more of the lore.
Well, you got to respect the old-fashioned radio play stuff because they were actually really good at scaring the shit out of people.
See, that's actually the same thing that what happened with the Green Lantern. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, and originally that was a comic that was designed around a cursed Chinese lamp that a miner had. And when he used it, he got superpowers and took out some of the bad guys that were trying to abuse the locals. And over the years, just like with Superman, eventually it became where the Green Lantern spent very little time on Earth and was out doing intergalactic things when it never even started off that way.
Right, and that's part of the soft reboot that they did for the Silver Age.
That was that was the times, like everything was about spaceman and rocket ships. Kennedy was sending motherfuckers to the moon, and it was the new thing. Like it's like when you're going to space, you're doing it in a tube. Like that's all they knew. They thought like, okay, if you're going to space, you could do it in like a hockey puck thing too, I guess.
And you also have to consider that's around the same time where the comics code came into existence, and they had to stop all the horror. Like, for example, with the Green Lantern you were talking about, the original Golden Age Green Lantern, that comic strip was the one that introduced Solomon Grundy, basically a resurrected being that was a mafia boss and then got more or less killed again by the Green Lantern, and that's why he's always hunting the Green Lantern to this very day kind of deal.
Well, beyond all the like early hokey stuff in like, for instance, like a Battlestar Galactica, why would everybody want a show like that, or a Star Trek or a Star Wars, more than the usual stick they were giving people? Like the evil robot, evil scientist, spaceship to the moon type shtick.
All right. Well, let me see.
And Dave, Sean, you guys have a thought to throw in here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been throwing in thoughts, but my mic was muted. So
okay, go ahead.
I just had to fix my mic. I don't have anything now. I'm sorry. I just had to fix my mic.
Oh, play a little catch up. What's your thoughts?
Well, I know we were talking about Ghostbusters before, and one of the complaints about the new trailer is a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't look funny. There's no jokes in it. There's like the one little joke, and when you watch Ghostbusters, there's no jokes really throughout the movie. The humor of Ghostbusters is that it's a really bizarre situation, and you got just regular guys that treat it like it's normal. They play pretty much. I mean, they're funny and they make little quips and stuff, but for the most part, everybody plays it straight. Everybody just is like, oh, there's ghosts everywhere, and you got these guys again. They got nuclear accelerators. They're shooting lasers at ghosts, and they're just like plumbers.
His girlfriend's hovering 4 feet above the bed.
Yeah, but you have a good point there, because if it was like what I brought up when we first got on, if the music was different, instead of it having that light tone, if it was more serious tone, you wouldn't know if it was if they weren't trying to be serious and trying to spook the bejeebies out of you, especially like the opening scene in the library when the ghost appears, slime and everything, and yells at him, and the books are flying, and they go taking off out of there.
The funny in that was the music. The music told you that what was happening was funny and not horrifying.
Exactly.
And that's the guy chasing him down, going, "What happened? What happened?" Was the cherry on top.
Yeah, that's one of the great movie soundtracks of all time. Really, is Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that still to this day.
Let me ask you this, and in terms of what's going on today, what would you like to see as a sci-fi comedy being done?
Frankly,
that frog idea looks awesome. To be honest with you, I'm really intrigued with Oddity.
You familiar with that movie that had Sean Connery in it back in the day, Outlander? Basically a mining colony, drugs, lots of shotguns.
Yeah, it was High Noon in Space. Yes.
Yeah. Dude, I gotta be honest with you. Like, if we're talking about low budget, right? Like a movie that anybody could make, something that ain't far off of that wouldn't hurt. I mean, every movie nowadays seems like they feel like they gotta justify $300 million, $500 million. We got to spend the gross national product of, a few small countries. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't get it. What happened to making movies because we could? Because we got stuff, we got money, we got all these people on staff. They can build us random spaceships. I don't like all this CGI stuff quite so much. I miss the old days when things were made of models and you felt like there was some originality and function to it.
Yeah, if I was gonna make a sci-fi comedy, I would do Independence Day, but from the point of view of the alien that refuels the ships, that refuels because you always get if it's not the Earthlings, you're gonna get the guy that's the warrior and the big pilot or whatever, or the leader.
You do a skit, right? When they bring that nuke up into the John, you do a skit about that guy who was sitting in there, the alien, right? Mm-hmm. And he's coming on to 15, 20 minutes of his life before coming on shift. And then he gets these fucking guys.
That is a seriously good idea, Dave.
They always talk, whenever the aliens come in all these movies, I mean, there's a few that have come out where they, the morons from outer space, that kind of stuff. But a lot of times with these big sci-fi movies, the aliens are all super intelligent and they all, know exactly how all the ships work and how all the physics of everything. In Star Trek, everybody knows how a warp engine works down to every detail. They may not choose to work on the warp engine, but everybody knows exactly how it works.
That's like basic learning at Starfleet, right? That'd be like assuming that everybody in the military knows how to work on a diesel engine or a diesel engine in a ship, which I'm sure is very different but similar in some aspects.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to see the guys that do the menial tasks. Maybe he does the little electronic repairs on a very specific system. I don't want to go so far. I mean, they're always going to go with the janitor or the guy that fixes the toilets. That's always the example. But you find the guy who doesn't know anything about the engines.
You want Rob, the elevator repairman.
Exactly.
You find yourself somebody very generic and very low, and you make something based off of okay, so the whole situation goes sideways and into the shit. So you just basically make a thing off of how this guy basically bungles his way out of the disaster completely by accident, being a total schmuck. Just dumb shit, bad luck. But without bad luck at all, he wouldn't have any luck. But that's why he's still alive.
Right.
Yeah.
See, if you think about it, when they unveiled Finn for the Disney Star Wars as the janitor, that's a good idea, but not executed correctly. See,
the thing that I didn't like about the whole Finn is that he's like some kind of confused, can't function, stormtrooper, right? Like if you're gonna have him be a stormtrooper, don't you think it would have been nicer if he was a little bit badass?
Right. No, you couldn't. It was against the agenda. Anytime he was badass was against another guy, but when it was around Rey, she took all the badass out of him to use on her own.
Yeah, his idiocy kind of made original Luke Skywalker, just snot still coming out of his nose, seem tame, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because at least Luke's out there with his fucking speeder being a badass and shit. Oh yeah, there's sand people out here. Fuck them. I'm gonna ride my car around as fast as I want. Fuck them.
Pretty much.
He's there ain't no chicks, but whatever. I'm gonna fucking drive around badass.
We had one heroic moment coming up when he was gonna sit there and blow that cannon away with his ship ran right up there, and Tico in the same exact ship somehow miraculously gets super speed to catch up with him when he's going full gore and knock him off because he was being stupid. That bothered me too.
The power of love. Do 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 do.
He should have been frontline stormtrooper, which he was, because that's when he escaped. He was like a stormtrooper on the front lines, and then he was the janitor. You know, the both things. The whole movie should have been from his point of view. The whole series, as every man observing all this. You know, the Jedi were a myth or whatever. He would be the everyman guy that didn't believe in it, and then she would have a little bit of belief in it, maybe. But it should have been from his point of view, watching everything going on around him.
Right. He should have been the janitor that had a mess in because he was escaping the authorities or whatever his commander. He puts on the stormtrooper outfits and he's like, "Oh crap, I'm here," and then that's why he doesn't shoot the guy of the people down below because I'm not a stormtrooper. I'm just a janitor.
I clean toilets.
You guys already rewrote the first movie for me, and now it's so much better.
And then he bungles it up, and he catches Poe Dameron. He's like, "Here, guard this guy." And it's like I'm not gonna guard this guy. He's like, "Hey, man, you know," he's like, "I know you want to escape from, from this." It's like, "Yeah, I want to escape from this. What are you thinking?" It's like, if you let me go, I'll leave you on another planet. I got an X-wing. You can just go hop in the back, and we'll get at it. Okay, we'll do that. And it's like, oh no, there's a TIE fighter. I'm a pilot. You're a pilot. Okay, we'll go over the TIE fighter. Hey, he's like, that's TIE fighter's mine. It's like, sorry, I gotta borrow it. The Kylo Ren told me to take this prisoner over here. And then
I actually enjoy the Saturday Night Live skits of Kylo Ren, pretending to be an employee more than I like regular Star Wars.
Right.
Because that shit is hilarious.
Yeah.
You did if Disney did that, like, okay, let's just say like they did it as like an on stage kind of play thing, right? Like if they did that, dude, people would go crazy for that.
You know what the sad part about it is that remember Star Detours that they canceled because they didn't want to weaken the brand. Now in hindsight, I'm pretty sure they looked at Star Detour and it's like, this stuff is better than whatever we were going to write.
Dude, I remember what the original thing was like, because like way back, we're talking like 30 some odd years or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in those days, the Indiana Jones experience was sat right next to the Star Wars experience. I mean, why the hell not? Both characters are Harrison Ford.
Right.
So they had themselves easily I don't know, maybe a 30, 40 foot tall AT-AT sat out front, which was probably the dopest fucking thing I have ever seen in my life, next to a Patton tank, and like Sherman tanks and Tiger tanks and shit like that, right? So then, like, that thing was okay, but I can imagine, I've seen footage from the new like tours and stuff, and they don't look as good. They don't seem like they're as good. So that kind of sucks. Spending all that money and you're getting a hackney version of what used to be already.
Right.
And then the Indiana Jones thing, although was fucking badass though. Like they had an actual airplane and it was dangerous as fuck.
I remember explosions. There was explosions there.
There were lots of explosions and people rolling around, and there's actual fan blades of an airplane. And it's like, okay, this is cool. I will admit, I definitely miss the old days attractions, and I certainly miss the price.
Oh yeah, we were thinking about going. It was just completely unworkable. This year.
Yeah,
now, it's gonna be cheap now though because of Corona.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it?
Even if it wasn't cheap, it would be on the empty side this time of year.
More empty than usual because nobody was going to Disney because it's been empty. They're like fed up. They actually priced it out. It was $300 per ticket. That they say if you want to go into a park, it's $300.
Yeah, it was,
Wait a minute. Did you? Is that legit? $300 a ticket?
Yes.
I got a family of 5, and we looked into it, and it's over two. It was over $2,000.
Holy
See?
smokes!
Yeah.
Years ago, we started taking. I got a severely handicapped son, and we never know when he's going to pass away. So we started taking him to Disney World, and we went 2 years, and we priced out and figured, you know what? Getting into this timeshare with Disney saved us a ton of money. But now we start looking at the tickets. Just the tickets in LA, if you were to go down to Anaheim and go to Disneyland, they're $200 a pop. Just the tickets. We're not talking about
that's
anything
crazy.
else. Now, see, with the timeshare, ours is paid off. We were fortunate enough to do that. It doesn't cost us any lodging or anything, but man, you buy food there, then you buy the tickets, then for parking and for travel and all that, just gets nuts.
Oh, it's a massive racket, yeah. And then they jam so many damn people in there, you're online forever.
Right. So
Yeah, I gave up on that stuff ages ago. I live pretty near to Six Flags Great Adventure in Jersey. So, if I'm desperate, I'll go over there.
yeah, I got Orlando Universal, and they still have pretty good attractions.
Now, Orlando Universal is dope, right? Like, yeah, I'd go to that.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard too. That's the place to go. But I went to Universal in California where I grew up, but never been to the Orlando one. I heard it's awesome.
No, Orlando tops it.
The only thing that I would say, and I don't know what state of affairs it's like it would be in anymore, but the one, I forget which one it's going to be. I guess it would probably be like Magic Kingdom, but the one that has all of the old soundstage stuff on it is where I would want to go.
That's
where they filmed Roger Rabbit and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And all. Is that all bulldozed now?
Yeah, that's under Galaxy Edge. That was MGM.
Yeah, damn shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that were upset about that. We used to take my son on there all the time and get his wheelchair up on there, and it was real easy to do. They'd do the movie ride and Roger Rabbit and a bunch of those things. And when we heard that was going down, it was like quite disappointed.
Yeah, no, that was I remember it was a great experience. And they had the thing there from was it Rocket Man? They had all kinds of stuff.
That didn't last long though.
The most memorable thing was when they take you in those little vehicles through like that little canyon, and then they basically recreate like an earthquake and blow up a gas tanker and a gas station and all kinds of other crazy shit, and then they unleash the Cylons, and that really sucky to know that stuff's all gone.
Yeah,
something's up with your mic again, Dave.
Is it?
There you go.
It's something crazy. Listening to the conversation, a lot of things that just jumped into my head. The reluctant astronauts, Don Knotts.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the wonderful Mr. Lippet? Again, Don Knotts.
I haven't seen that movie in years. I love that movie.
The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. Again, Don Knotts. Of the three Don Knotts movies, two of them are legit sci-fi. And I'm thinking, you know what? We did have comedy and sci-fi. It was an abundant back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Well, a lot of it they didn't take it serious anyway. They thought that was all kiddie stuff. So you still had stuff like Them. And whenever, like the things from anytime you had aliens from outer space or whatever in the 50s, they always took that seriously because it was always about the Russian threat or the nuclear threat or whatever. But a lot of it, they figure, it's just for kids anyway.
Yeah, and you know what? We had everyone here I know has seen the $6 Million Man,
mm-hmm.
and the humor in that show was all situation comedy. It's like him shaking hands with somebody, and that's and the person actually realizing, hey, wait a minute, this guy's stronger than I thought. That kind of humor, right?
Yeah.
And
I had mentioned early on with Lost in Space, you look at the Doctor, he did put the family in dangerous situations most of the time, but he was comic relief.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And
I think he made up a lot of those robot insults on the spot. I think a lot of that was ad libbed.
man, if that's true, that's like one of the all-time greatest performance ever for TV. Some of that stuff, the way he chastises the robot
Mhm.
and makes those one paragraph what do you call put downs.
Yeah.
It was a highlight of the whole show. And I had a hard time actually keeping up with. What did he say? I can't even find this word in the dictionary. That kind of stuff happened to me a lot. But there's also other sci-fi, that they have comedy in it, and the one thing that really impressed me. Give me a sec. I'm just looking for that title right now. No, it's not coming to me. Oh. It was in the 70s, and it had to do. It was one of the 3 or 4 Gene Roddenberry spin-offs between Star Trek and Star Trek the movie, Star Trek the TV series, and Star Trek the movie. Gene Roddenberry
He didn't do My Favorite Martian, was it?
No, it's not My Favorite Martian. It was. Give me a sec. I'm gonna look it up. Gene Roddenberry show.
Genesis 2?
What's that?
Genesis 2?
That's it. That's it. Okay. Where I'm leading to this is actually really unusual, because you had Star Trek the TV series, and it had a lot of great humor incorporated into the stories. And then Gene Roddenberry came up with Genesis, and there was 2 or 3 other similar themed TV series or pilots that he created. And honestly, they weren't funny. They weren't funny at all. But and then it just looped back to Star Trek the movie, and then the first one, was it really funny? Yeah, it had a few moments. The second film, it was funny. Yeah, it had a lot of great moments. The third one, the fourth one, and so forth. And then they hit Next Generation, and they hit a great stride, and that was wonderful. But he actually tested the waters, creating sci-fi without humor, and it didn't pick up. Can you imagine that? He literally had to go full circle and loop back to get to Star Trek, where he's best known for. And
well, if there's no humor at all, then the audience isn't going to relate to it. I mean, it doesn't have to be all yucks and laughs the whole time, but you have to throw in those little bits. If you don't, the audience just kind of tunes out, because it's not what life is really about. There's always little funny moments. Somebody slips and falls on the street, or little things like that kind of happen in real life, and it reminds everybody, of life. We're all mortal, and it gives everybody a little laugh. If you don't give everybody at least just a little bit, just a tiny little joke, just to break the tension, or just to humanize everybody, then a lot of times the audience just tunes out.
Data did that an awful lot. I always think of the Chinese, the Chinese handcuffs where he got his fingers stuck, and here's this brilliant android who could tear the thing apart easily, and yet he was sitting there playing with it, and the captain had to take that off of him. Or he would try and tell a joke, or he wouldn't get it for a day later after Q made it known to him, or just different things. He was a lot of the comedy. Him and Worf.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna pull it back, and I'm gonna go even further back. Robbie the Robot.
Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet. Yeah, I mean, the thing that really caught my attention back then is oxygen. I rarely use it, sir. I mean, as a kid, I think I was like 5, 6 years old. I wasn't really well versed in school at all, but I got that joke.
Mm-hmm.
It totally floored me. I mean, it just Morbius, something's approaching, from the Southwest. All that stuff was serious and serious. But then when Robbie was, he took a swing of the alcohol and made the analysis, and then he says, how many pints do you want?
Yeah.
This was a serious sci-fi film, based on the id, and just the humor that was coming out of Robbie, just the robot itself. It's like C-3PO and R2-D2 in Star Wars, in a sense, just an early version of them. And I miss that. And the other movie that was great was Short Circuit.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Short Circuit was completely the opposite.
Short Circuit was seriously one of the single greatest movie ideas that they had ever come up with, and not knowing they would absolutely fuck it up, but that would be an amazing movie to remake nowadays because it's never been more possible. I'll give you another one on top of Short Circuit that I think was one of the greatest. No Batteries Included.
Oh yeah.
Although it was sort of a weird emotional interplay of people aging and having to move out of there to New Jersey, the whole concept of those robots was insane. If you redid that now with the technology available now, that would be an amazing movie, provided the story was written by somebody like Paul or somebody who has actually an idea of what a story should be about.
Yeah.
I also like Cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
Cocoon
Oh
was really
oh
good.
my gosh, yes, Cocoon. It's for the longest time. I enjoyed that movie in the theaters. For the longest time, I couldn't look at my grandpa who visited from Greece any different. It was really weird. I'm telling you, how much that movie influenced my thinking. It just for a few months. It was the weirdest.
Anybody in here ever seen the movie Robo Jocks?
I've heard of it. I've never.
Yes.
The two
I like
fighting robots.
Robo-Jocks.
If you haven't seen Robo Jocks, I mean, you just don't know. You're missing out big time.
No.
No, you had it right before with
Yeah,
Dina, but that got you there anyway.
Yeah.
Changing speed just a little bit, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but this one I always thought you take a real high stressful horror movie like Aliens 2, and then you put Bill Paxton and Bishop the android together, do the thing where he starts doing the knife between the fingers, or game over, man. To me, that broke a lot of the tension. It was, even though it was, this was people dying, real life and death, but it was kind of like, okay, we can take a breather when these guys are on screen.
Oh yeah. It's like when the Sarge, yells off screen. You don't even see it. The Sarge is just yelling off screen. Hudson, get over here, or secure that chicken shit, Hudson. It's like there was nothing there to react other than just the straight delivery, and the camera was stuck on the A-Poem, I think it was his character name, and that was great humor. And you know what? Now that you mention Aliens, I have to tell you this experience. When I went to see Aliens for the first time, there was a guy in the movie theater who already saw the movie. Okay, and there was a scene where they're looking at their scanners and they're saying, they're coming, they're inside. What do you mean they're inside? They're right here. They're right in front of us. They're on top of us. And they all look up and they look at the ceiling. And then I think it was Hicks. He goes up to have a quick look, and then he pans around between the panels and the ceilings, and you see the aliens. Well, that moment when the camera just like wiped over to the aliens, it scared everybody. But it didn't scare everybody as much as the people in the movie theater, in my experience, because when that camera was panned over, there's a guy who already saw the movie. He yelled out perfectly at that moment and scared the bejesus out of everybody. There was nobody in that theater that wasn't laughing and crying at the same time. And I think it was for a couple of minutes. We couldn't hear what was going on in the movie.
My dad did the same thing with the original Star Wars. When they were in the trash compactor and that little eyeball popped up and looked around, he would yell when that came up because I don't know how many times he saw it, and it would make people jump. I thought that was funny.
Oh my gosh, yes, that actually did throw me for a loop the first time I saw it. In fact, the first time I saw Star Wars, I think it was 9, 10 years old. I was alone in the movie theater by myself. Yes, back then you can do that, eh? You just go to the local Roxy, pop down your change that you saved from bottle caps and bottles, and go watch a movie.
So you're my age because I was 9 when that came out. We were, what was it, like 17 in line for the first showing.
Oh, it was the middle of the day. It was the middle of the day. It was a Saturday for me, and I just for the last week or so, all I hear is from the kids on the street is like, oh yeah, they destroyed a planet and they got these swords that have light, and going like, what the hell are they talking about? So I mean, literally everyone's talking about it. I'm going like, what are you guys talking about? And they all look at me, oh, you didn't see it, huh? Well, you're not in our clique then. And at that point, it's like I just grabbed all my bottle caps, went to the variety store. I said, how much for all this? The guy, the variety store clerk, shafted me on the price, but there was just enough in quarters and nickels and dimes that I just went over to the Roxy Theater, all within like 6 blocks from my house, and just put the money in, went in, sat in the back seat, and just watched the movie. I think it was like 6 people there at the on a Saturday noon. It was a nice hot summer day actually, but what an experience. I left there, my mind was completely in shock. I didn't understand what I saw for the first time. I couldn't digest it. I had no idea what I was watching, and then I went back in, was it 3 or 4 times during the week. Took my mom with my brother crying. Watched it, and then all of a sudden I started to come to a realization. This has got to be the greatest thing I've ever saw. My God, I gotta buy everything. I gotta buy the books. I gotta buy the toys and stuff like that.
That was universal. Everybody, didn't matter if you're a kid, adult. Parents are buying lunch boxes for themselves. There was adults going to work carrying a Star Wars lunch pail.
Does everybody remember the little
guys
booklet
are
that
also
they hand?
forgetting the fact that there was probably subliminal messaging in the commercials and in the ad material.
Oh
so,
yeah. I was thirsty for Coke. That's for sure.
But does everybody remember the little booklet that they handed out in the theater?
Oh, you're kidding me? I had it for the longest time, and my mom threw it out because she thought it was just advertisement from the freaking mail. I go, Mom, what are you doing? Oh, if I had that booklet, today I could have put it on eBay easily.
Yeah, you know how many moms have sort of fucked over collections over the years? Like, the collateral damage is epic.
Oh, as an aside, my mom I could only store my comics underneath the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom wanted to wipe underneath the bed, to collect the dust, and she saw all the books and just threw them out. If I had that collection, if that collection had survived my mom in the early 80s, I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't know any of you. I would have a mansion and a yacht. I mean, that's how different my life would have been. My mom made me poor for the whole life. She made me a starving artist.
Stuff like that, I've always felt was the inspiration for Married with Children.
Oh
yeah.
Jeez, Meg, my life was going well until I saw you.
Pretty much.
Oh, good gosh. Yeah, what a memory.
Yeah, I saw that movie when I was 4. That was the first movie my dad took me to. And we saw it when the re-release in 79. And I remember when Star Wars, like nowadays, when a movie comes out, like even next year it's practically on network TV or it's on one of the little cable channels or whatever. TBS will play, something that came out a year or two earlier. And when Star Wars first came out on network TV, when they first showed it, it was probably, let's see, it came out in 77. It was probably like 1984 or 85. And I remember I had the VCR all set and we recorded that movie. Every day when I came home from school, I watched Star Wars off of that videotape, off of TV. And I must have seen that movie 30, 40 times. Just every day.
There is Chinese. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's just he pulled up the picture and just reminded me because I lived right by there. There's the Chinese. I mean, not it was a couple miles away, but 20, 30 miles. The Chinese theater with those big crowds. I remember seeing that the next day because, like I said, I was there on opening day, and everyone in Southern Cal went and saw that.
Which was kind of funny because that opening day, George Lucas was at the diner like a block over, and they didn't even know that the lines were for his movie. They were just like, "I hope the movie's doing good."
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about that whole experience is that the only people who saw it coming were the people behind the camera, and even then, when most of them actually experienced the movie for the first time with the soundtrack, it was dare I say, a moment that will live in their psyche for the rest of their life. It's like a profound moment of such high degree. Yeah, and you know what? Interesting thing about Star Wars. What is the funniest moment that all of you recall? For me, hands down is when 3PO kicks R2 as they're separating on the desert.
Yeah.
And says, "Yeah, you bucket of bolts or something. Yeah, you go that way. I'm going over here. I don't need you."
I like the next scene where he's like, "He tricked me into going this way."
I always laughed at the Jawas. They kill me today.
Curse my body! I've crushed them. Oh no!
Well, hey guys, it's getting kind of late. I need to sneak off.
Oh yes. Oh
It
my
was good
gosh.
chatting
Look
with
at
you.
that.
Yeah.
We're coming up on how many?
Almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
$2.5
kept
hours.
your guests that long. Wow, George.
Well, we had Alan for an hour. We were lucky and blessed with that. Come on. I mean,
All right, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, dude.
that was a bonus. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you to Mr. Alan Dean Foster for coming by, humbling his presence. Humbled his presence. Any last thoughts, guys? Because
That's 2 Star Wars guys I've talked to. He wrote Splendor of the Mind's Eye, right?
yes, he did.
Yes.
And so I've talked to him now, and then I went to a comic convention a couple years ago, and I met Greg Hildebrandt, who painted the original Star Wars poster, Star Wars movie poster.
You bastard.
And that guy, and I got a whole bunch of because he did a whole series of Marvel cards, him and his brother.
And you
So
got a signature. I'm assuming somewhere.
I got a whole bunch of the trading cards signed by him, and I got an original pencil sketch that because he still does covers for Marvel. As a matter of fact, while we were there, he was doing this cover of Thanos, and he was doing this painted cover, and he was just the nicest guy. My wife had no idea who he was, and she was just standing there chatting him up. And just talking to him like he was some regular guy. I know he's a regular guy, but she's just chatting to him, and I got to talking to her later, and I was like, "Hey, you were just like chatting up the guy that painted the original Star Wars poster, right?" And she was like totally blown away.
What, that guy? The guy owes me $5.
Yeah. No, but I actually sat down and did a little. If you go to my channel. And you go to, I did a video where I did a thing about that, about the comic convention. And I sat down and did like a 5-minute interview with him and talked about a little bit about his life and about the thing he was posting, he was painting.
Oh man, that would have been a great thing to talk about with Alan.
Isn't that the original poster there on the upper right?
Yeah, it was. There were different versions. He did one of them, and I think it was the most popular version.
Yeah, he's the creator of Lens Flare, all done in artwork.
Yeah,
There it is.
There it is. That's the one.
yeah.
Let's see if I can get a good zoom in here
Yeah,
somewhere.
I know there were a few different versions, and he did what I think was the most popular version. I think it's the one with all the ships, the X-wings in the background and stuff. His name's Greg Hildebrandt.
There we go. That's the one.
Yeah, he was. He was. Like I said, he was just. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but he was just the nicest guy.
Yeah, man, I love this poster. Yeah, I bought the Marvel comic books,
Mm-hmm.
the oversized Marvel comic books, because it was Star Wars, for crying out loud.
Well, he gave her
Yeah.
some boobs, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and you know what? A funny aside is that the late Carrie Fisher was really stacked. I mean, George Lucas went out of his way to.
It's like tapered down and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they're ever gonna remake Star Wars, which I think Disney is gonna do it, give Leia double D's.
Well,
That's not gonna happen.
Respect the original material, man.
in contrast, the girl that played Rey is completely flat.
Oh my gosh, yes. What a sharp contrast. Too bad. Okay, guys. Any last words? We're at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. We started at 9:00. We had the great Alan Dean Foster. We had Stogie on from Action Art Comics and other Action Art stuff. Go down the line. Let's go from Adega all the way up.
Well, my history of comic reading is very thin. I have a couple of steampunk ones. I have some Babylon 5 ones. I have, of course, the Green Lantern stuff. But each one of your comics, starting from George, is the one who pulled me in, and then I listened to Denali and then Oddity. Those are three that now I'm gonna have to buy. You guys sold me, and thanks for having me around. I know I didn't contribute much, but gee, it's been an honor.
No, thank you for coming by. Thank you to PJ from Orville Nation for making it happen, for making this stream happen. Much appreciated. Honestly, this stream would never have happened without PJ from Orville Nation, because he had the Alan Dean Foster interview, and I was on that panel, and there was a lot of talk, a lot of humor, and it sparked the thoughts for this stream, humor and sci-fi. It was a very difficult thing. It was discussed how difficult it is to have humor and sci-fi on that panel. I just wanted to expand it to a full show.
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking about all things happiness, regarding the genre that we all love. It's very much missing in the products that are coming out today. I'm looking at you, Picard, and STD, you bastards. All right, who's next on the list? Denali, talk to us, man.
Talking. Well,
well said, sir.
Well, definitely enjoy this panel. Was good to talk to Mr. Foster, Alan, about old movies that people have forgotten about, and kind of sparking those memories again. Being a kid, and writing some of my childhood works. Big fan of him, like I started before. I'm excited about talking more about things that why we enjoy these things, instead of what's making us angry, because at the end of the day, you know, they're going to do whatever they want to do, but they can't take away the stuff that we enjoyed in the past as much as they, you know, try to do so. I have my comic book. I'm honor and flatter Tigger that you are interested in looking into that my project, and I hope that, you know, when we release it and it's in your hands, and anybody who backs it, they will be satisfied and thoroughly impressed that they enjoyed the whole experience, you know, from beginning to end.
And they can go sign up at denellis.com, and which is very simple, very quick, easy to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get to your newsletter and be informed when the book will be available, or see the progress of the book.
Correct. Or if they can't remember that, theimmortalmask.com, and it'll take you directly there as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, Oddity. Let's talk about it.
Okay. I was just honored to sit here and listen to you guys go on and talk about, you know, the genre that you guys all love and are very passionate about, and to hear, you know, a legend in the field talk a bit. I was mostly just listening. I was working the whole time because I have to knock this book out, of course. So I just sat back and enjoyed the conversation and try not to sound like an idiot too much.
What are you saying? You were actually committing to your responsibilities while
Yes,
being an active member on a live stream?
I was working the whole time.
I am shocked, sir. I'm shocked, I tell you.
I'm shocked that you believe him.
Whatever, Dave. and no, Dave has done a fantastic job with writing and adding in humor into the story. I really couldn't have done it without him. I don't have the chops for writing like that, and to have him jump on board and, you know.
Yeah, you could do it without him. Just get him to write a few more stories, and then just find a way to, take him out.
No, because I learned from you. I'm registering all the stories now.
Oh, wow. Gee. My gosh, after 30 years, somebody actually goes out and actually spends money on my ideas.
Now you owe him some money, Dave.
Oh, good gosh, that's great. Dave, what's your thoughts?
Oh, you know what? I took on this job as writing because, I tricked him into thinking that I was good at it. But no, for real, it's a great opportunity. I was kind of looking for a way to get my foot in the door, and this was a great project. I mean, we got an awesome character that jumps right off the page, literally and figuratively, and it's just a great project to be a part of, and I'm glad that I got to write it.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. And my little moment of boomering, trying to move stuff around. And me personally, I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to Alan, however, so briefly. Thank you very much to Mr. Foster for coming by, for saying yes. It was much appreciated. I'm still starstruck by the man.
Yeah.
I cannot express how much so. It's just ridiculous. The one thing that really has ingrained in me for a very long time is just humor, period. And humor in sci-fi has been a big thing about what I've been creating for a very long time. And it's a thing that if you don't get it, if you're not part of it, you end up becoming a social justice warrior.
Mm.
Instead of creating something happy, something to entertain, what do you do? What do you do with your life? You paint your hair red or pink or blue.
You could contribute to the joy, or you could suck it all away.
Yeah, that's right. Life is binary. Oh, wait a minute. Did I say the wrong thing?
Binary.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Where's the buttons here? Where is the button to say? That's one button. Almost there. And the next button to end the stream is coming right up. If I could find it. It's my first. Oh no. Let's see. Nope. That's the ban button. I don't want to do that yet. I'm very happy with all of you. Oh, there you go. End stream, ladies and gentlemen. We're ending the stream in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bye.
Later, guys.
Later.
Oh, come on. You just ruined a good countdown.